There's another hook that can be extremely helpful for us, and that is the use effect hook. Let's go take a look at the documentation on it before I show you some code of how to actually run it. It's where all the other hooks are. So it's going to be in docs, concepts, function components, predefined hooks, and it's this one down here, use effect. Use effect is pretty much exactly the same as you would have in React if you're coming from that world. And if you're not familiar with React, but a different front end framework, then it's a way for us to hook into the component's life cycles. So if you wanted something to let you know, hey, the component has updated in some way and a re-render is happening, how can I run code at that point in time? Well, this is how. So use effect, basically it's what effect do you want to have after an update happens? So you hand it to them and they use it. Okay, so what does that really mean here? Uh, let's take a look through their example. Basically, they have a state and then a use effect where they can, every time that the component that like state updates, which then is going to cause a re-render, which then causes this closure to rerun, they're going to they're going to do this thing. Well, they're going to set the title to be whatever the counter is. That's great. Now there's this closure at the very end, and this one is a little bit easy to sort of like miss. This is a function, a closure, a that's going to be returned at the end of use effect. This is what's going to be done uh, on the destruct action of the component. So when this is cleaned up and torn down, this code runs first. Uh, Most of the time, like I found that I don't usually have too many times where I need to like clean up things, but it can be really helpful. Uh, so let's go take a look at how we might end up using this. Here I am in the live.rs. We have some state in here. Actually, this is a yeah, okay, this is a function component. Uh, do, 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 uh, we have a user state. Let's just create a use effect in here. So use effect takes in a callback. This we don't get anything passed into us because this is just something that's going to happen now. So this code will run on. So first render all re-renders. So if you have something you want to like do every time that something re-renders, this is where to do it. But the first render is kind of important here too, because sometimes we want things to run, and we don't necessarily have them yet at first run when the component truly loads, which is when this code happens. So we actually ran into this in the project, and so I'm coming back from the future in order to record this to sort of like show off how we might use effect to the greatest effect. Okay, so imagine, if you will, we have state that is going to host that hold a bunch of like tasks and to do items, um, but it doesn't exist the first time that the component runs. It's gonna take a little bit of time before we get it. So it's an option and it's a none to begin with, and then later on, who knows when it's gonna be a something. That's a problem. So we need to now know that it exists. So we can in here check if in our case, it's a like authentication token. So if something like our authentication token, so if flag is, our auth token is true or exists, then we're going to want to maybe like get all the users to do tasks. Of course, if the user doesn't have a token, then we just don't do that at all. And so it's just a plain simple if statement. Okay, so that's easy enough. Now at the very end here, this is yelling at us because we have to return a closure. So at the end, let's just do that. This is like a basic closure that's not going to do anything, but it's essentially a no-op closure. That's fine. Now, the same thing that we ran into, if we get the token and it exists now, and we then do a API request to get all of the tasks. Great, except we also then update state with those tasks, which causes a re-render, which then runs the use effect again, which, hey, we have a token. Let's get the task again. So we do another API request and then set all the tasks into the store, which causes a re-render because even though it's the same exact tasks and the shape of the objects are different, technically they are new objects. And so now we're in an infinite loop where we're just constantly hitting the server and we're not really going anywhere. And eventually we just crash our browser. Not great, right? So what we really want to do is check for this auth token exists and if it's our first render. So how are we going to do that? Well, I recommend we use a use state here to check to see if it's our first render. I'm actually going to use a second use state that's going to hold this as just a Boolean flag. So we'll just do like first load. It's going to be our use state, our init function, and we're going to say this is actually first load is true. Okay, so we have that here. I'm now going to need to move the first load in. And so now we can say, okay, if the auth token exists and it's our first render, well, that would be basically if dereferenced first load. Now this is only run, well, this is only run when the component loads for the first time. This shouldn't run every time we refresh the state and re-render. However, as it is written right this second, it will do that because we need to now set this to be false. So at the end here, maybe like if it's first load, so now do whatever like data load need to do. And then don't forget to first load set now you're false. Now, if we want to, we could set a first load to be true again when this component is completely destroyed. However, putting this in the main library component, if this component is destroyed, then it's over. Like the entire app is getting refreshed and reloaded, in which case it's going to be reloaded anyway. So that's not really necessary for what we're going to do. However, if it's something that you're running in like a different component and you want it state like you have a counter or a timer and you want to be able to delete that timer so it just doesn't continue running, this is where you would remove that. But for APIs hitting and sort of like initialization of all the data, for an entire application, storing that into like some centralized store or a context or something like that. This is an excellent pattern. So anyways, I just wanted to show you how you can use effect to great effect, and then be able to also not get yourselves into an infinite loop. All right, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.